rolling down the river.
So disturbing.
I know.
So disturbing.
When you've got a microphone in your hand, you really want to sing, don't you? You don't really want to say anything.
No.
No. Okay.
Is there anything we should be doing or what?
No, he's talking to me in the ear.
We're not as professional.
Yeah.
as
Okay.
We waited hours.
We've covered some topics.
Okay, I will do. Okay, I'm just going to. If you want to speak, you've got to have the microphone in your hand. So, and you just have to push it up. It's just like that bit you push up there.
Is it sprung?
So.
What, while we're speaking?
Well, we'll leave it on. We'll leave it turned on all the time. But for it to be recorded properly, you need to speak into the microphone. Yeah. So, have you got a first question, Frank?
No,
Oh, Mike's got the first question. Here you go.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for that. I do have a question actually relating to perhaps the last presentation. Where was that from?
From Paul.
Paul, sorry. Yes, Paul. A couple of things today have been in the news, and the one, of course, is it Phones for
You? Yeah.
Phones for You have gone into liquidation, administration, should I say? And the reason for that, I think, is because I think it's Vodafone and one or two of the other suppliers have for some reason pulled out, and there must be reasons for this. And the outcome, of course, is the ultimate for having a bad reputation in that you don't survive. Have you any thoughts on that?
You have to pass it over.
There seems to be with reputation, again we're talking about perceptions of reputation. Vodafone and I think it's O2, isn't it, are the other company that have, if you want to say, done the dirty on Phones for You. There seems to be a level within business where having I'll use a better word, a dodgy reputation doesn't actually matter. Vodafone's reputation from pulling the rug on a supply company, I don't believe will be tarnished in any way whatsoever, because your average Joe is going to buy a phone on Vodafone if he can get the deal he wants, the model of phone he wants, and the coverage in the area he's in. And I don't believe that we are ethical enough buyers, spenders, customers, that we wouldn't buy off a company because we know it had sold a supplier down the Swanee. I don't believe we're actually that deep. I did a lot of research on BP, on the Deepwater Horizon catastrophe and the oil slick, and it's quite relevant because it's in the paper last week, whereas the government has actually said that BP was 67% to blame and Transocean were 37% or whatever, I don't know the percentages. So BP are going to be forking out for this for 20 years, and you look at BP's profit and loss sheet, they lost a lot of money in 2010 while that oil was pluming out into the Gulf, but their shares are two-thirds away. The shares are back up to 466 from a start point of 605 when the accident happened. They are still 30th in the most profitable companies in the world, and when I drove to work this morning, there were still people filling up at BP garages. And we will still fill up at BP garages if the petrol's right and if they sell the right coffee. So I don't believe, we talk a lot about stakeholders, it taught me a lot about stakeholders, and the stakeholders in Phones for You, the customers, I actually don't believe they will care.
Can I just, I'll move on from that because I have a follow-up question if you don't mind, and only because it's topical more than anything else, but on Thursday there's quite a large vote taking place in somewhere north of here. But I mean, on a personal note, I might have some of my pension plans in Scottish Widows, a Scottish-based company, part of Lloyd's TSB. And it's only recently that some of these companies are coming out with statements to pacify the potential reputational risk of a yes vote, where they might be outside of Great Britain. They'll be outside of it, and therefore wanting to set a headquarters up in London. And I'm not convinced this is being completely void of damage to their reputation about it. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on the Scottish debate. Here and now is not the time for them. personally, I would have liked to vote because I think it's going to affect as many people in this room, whichever way the vote goes. Yeah. Companies based in Scotland, do we want to leave our money with them or not? It's an interesting question. I don't know where we would go with it. I know that I had a pension statement recently, and it tells me where my money is invested around the world, and it tells me the percentage that's invested in every country around the world, because we're looking at ethical banking. We're looking at putting our money in ethical positions. Does the Scotland affair affect the reputation of the Royal Bank of Scotland, moving their headquarters or threatening to move their headquarters from Edinburgh to London? Again, I obviously don't think it makes that much of a difference. I don't know. It'd be interesting to get anybody else's view on that.
I've got a view on that. I actually think that when you look at the size of the economy in Scotland and the population of Scotland, I mean, the population is very similar to that of the West Midlands conurbation, really, in Scotland. So I think I think they've assessed the risk, and they've thought, well, we're going to do less damage by actually pulling out of Scotland or saying that we're going to move than they would if they stayed there. And perhaps, you know, us English would be sort of saying, well, why are they staying there? You know, even part of Scotland. I think they have assessed the risk. I really do believe it's a decision they've made based on really, you know, how much money they make in certain areas, and that's really where they've come to their decision. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of the other people, like Standard Life as well, one of the biggest insurance companies in the UK that are doing the same. And I think it is that they've assessed it. I really do believe that. Do you want to ask a question there, Frank?
Yes, please.
There you go. You don't even need to press it; it's all done.
Right, okay. It was about to Louise and Colette about social value, and I thought it was very interesting. You were saying about Wrekin Housing Trust and what they do for social value. What I wanted to explore was what's in it for the private sector, because the public sector, the third sector, are about social value, and therefore will be easily persuaded, I guess, to do things that add to social value. I mean, you alluded to some of the benefits that this recent research has pointed out for private sector companies, but why should private sector companies want to do social value?
I think our thoughts were that obviously the access for public bodies, and it says about consider. But when we were looking at sort of the research and reading up on it, you know, there's £260 billion worth of procurement and commission happens from public sector bodies. So if the government looks at strengthening the Act, then some of these private sector organisations, whether they want to or not, are going to have to get on board with it, because obviously that's a hell of a lot of money that they're going to be wanting to actually get their hands onto, really. I think you're right in terms of the third sector and smaller private companies. If some of the public sector bodies look at different ways and break up some of these larger contracts, so that smaller local businesses or third sector organisations like charities or social enterprises have an opportunity to gain those contracts, then it's better for local businesses and it's better for the local economy. So it's better again for sort of public services in terms of that. But I think, you know, at this point, my opinion, and it might be sort of different to Louise's, is that unless the government strengthens that Act, then, you know, unless some organisations some private sector see clear benefits for doing it, they're not going to do it. There are some out there that will and do, and I think we were talking about Land Rover earlier, weren't we, in terms of they do a lot of work in the community, but they're out there identifying probably sort of their future engineers, so they probably see some benefits there, but it's got to be a benefit to them, otherwise currently they're not going to. Do you want to?
Oh, sure, right, yeah. Yeah, just to reiterate really what Colette said there, I think private sector businesses are going to have to look at creating social value more if they do want to, and use it as a tool to gain public sector contracts, sort of like in the future. The only concern is a lot of from our research, private sector businesses will sort of like say, oh yeah, we're delivering social value, and they can point to a load of inputs and a load of outputs of what they're doing. We donate to charity, we take on apprenticeships, we take on trainees, and they can list all these things, but it's actually the outcome. Well, what? And the thing that worries me, well, I suppose, will be less. There'll be less incentive for a private sector. That they will be able to show all these inputs and outputs, but I wonder whether the commitment will be there to the actual outcomes and actually making a difference and making it a bit more than just sort of like lip service and saying, oh, we're doing this, that, and the other.
Thank you. Just picking up on that then. I mean, if some private sector organisations are doing this, why are they doing it? What's the evidence that says the reasons why they're doing it at the moment then?
I mean, the research that we've done, it is very much a PR exercise. I'm not saying that of all businesses, but there is, from our research showed, it is more of a PR tick box exercise. If you want to get these public sector contracts that you need to be demonstrating, and from the primary research we did with a social value consultant that's got a lot of years of experience in working with businesses and organisations, she said these private sector companies will be able to list you a whole host of things that they're doing, but they'll be very different in the way that a social enterprise or a third sector organisation would do it. The actual they will do a lot more. Say, for example, if a social enterprise works with trainees or apprenticeships, they'll provide them a lot more support in terms of building their confidence, investing a lot more time in actually turning them around rather than just offering them a placement. Whereas private sector businesses, haven't got the same motivation or incentive really.
Frank, I think there's quite a clear answer to your question, and the ladies have touched on it. I think the short, sharp answer is there's massive contracts to be gained from the government, and procurement by the government out to the public. And for large organisations, much of their revenue comes from the government. And I think, and forgive me, I'm not as queued up as you are about this, but I think it's something like for companies that go for a particular size, projects in government-funded projects have to show a particular amount of social value coming from that particular project. Now, I don't know how crystal clear that the numbers and figures are, and that's, I think, where you're saying that they need to clarify these things. But I think it is. It's pure and simple. The massive contracts. I mean, look at just across the road here with the train from London coming up here. I mean, there were massive contracts involved in that, and it's got to show social welfare.
There's an interesting one with Waits Construction. Waits Construction do a lot of local authority construction work, and to qualify as a supplier for Waits Construction, you have to go through a questionnaire, supplier questionnaire, and it works out a pie chart. And the 8 points of the pie chart relate to whether you're financially viable, whether you train your technicians, whether you've had accidents in the past, and the social interaction is in there. You have to be doing something with the local community. Okay, I'd like, if I may, to move on to the sentiment analysis. Would that be all right?
Yeah,
absolutely. The research I do is to do with reputation, and I think it's conceivable the research I do into reputation almost disappears because of something called sentiment analysis. And let me give you an example. I can go onto a place on the web and I can type in a company's name, Company X, and what will come up is a ratio. So let's say it's 2 to 1, and that would say that there's twice as many good things said about it than there is bad things, and that comes up within about 10 seconds. I can type another company's name in, Company B, and it might come up 18 to 1, or it might come up 1 to 5. And it would be an indicator of the sentiment that at that particular moment in time. And so I did a little bit of research, and I'm preaching you know all about this. I did a little bit of research, and what they're doing is they're going globally and they're looking at real time, and they're looking at what's on Twitter, what's on Flickr, what's on Instagram, what's on all the sort of digital programs, and they're bringing them together and identifying those comments that are positive comments against those comments that are negative comments, and there's those neutral comments. And I can't remember the particular one that I go on, but it does say where it's getting a lot of these actual measures from, whether it be Instagram, whether it be YouTube or whatever. That's pretty much the way I see it. Is that, would that be the same if I went on any sentiment analysis?
Actually, each result from each company that offers sentiment analysis differs from user to user. But actually, when you're searching Google for sentiment analysis on a company, it's just going to tell you, we've got this many pluses, this many minuses. But if you're searching for, let's say you've got a certain company in your head, and you want to know exactly what the whole thinks about that company, you're going to get a percentage rather than a number. So you're going to get a cloud of words with the most important ones, and even if it's a negative answer, it might be positive depending from your point of view, depending on the words that are the negative ones, because it might be a strong negative word which cancels all the other neutral words. So it's a bit more complex, but it all depends on the system you're using. But there are not too many companies offering it. But they've got lots of sources, and the result depends a lot on the information source they've got. Because there are companies, for example, that offer stock price forecasting, which can be forecasted just by using Twitter up to 95% accuracy. Well, yeah, for the top 20 players in the market. But still, it's just one source and for just one company.
I just want to say I found that, and indeed the other presentations, extremely thought-provoking, and it's probably brought to my mind far more questions than there are answers, or time to have answers. But we can talk about that at another time. Frank, would you like? Okay.
Okay. Are we about done then? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you both for attending. I'm sure we've enjoyed putting it all together and learnt a lot of new things. And so thanks for the opportunity for doing that as well. So, cheers.
Well done. Well done. So what